My name is Jillian Nguyen and I play TRACY DWYER in BARONS. Well, it came to me in Feb 17th or something, 2021, I remember. And I put down the audition, but it was terrible. And so it was a very long process for me, and it kind of went around and around. And in the end, I really fought for the role. Because as soon as I read the character, I thought, this is me in like a parallel universe. And it doesn't always happen for, for every character that comes along, but I kept thinking about her. And yeah, I really, really wanted her. Well, she's an art teacher, and he lives this simple life with, with Trotter. And even though that, that idyllic life starts to change very quickly, I kind of saw parallels in my mum's life as well. She was also a teacher in her small village in Vietnam before she left. And but yeah, just for me, just reading about the character and how much she loved Trot just really drew me to her. Like, she has such a big heart. She's so incredibly giving, and yeah, I just really loved her as soon as I read her. Well, for me, it was, this really special part of Aussie history that we don't really know about. These surfers and these surf brands, which they established in their tiny flats and, their backyards, and they had nothing, and they built these empires that really conquered the world. And growing up, I went to a high school where we were forced to surf every single year in Torquay. And the girls would weep and cry and have breakdowns on the shore. And we're at Bells Beach and stuff where pro surfers actually surf. So every year we had to go there, and I remember I would never weep on the shore. I would actually attack the waves and drown every single time. But yeah, so I have a real love and fondness for surf culture. And also all the girls on the camp trip, the highlight was always going to the Quicksilver and, surf shops. It was the outlet, actually. So yeah, reading the scripts and seeing, I had no idea about this history, of these really inspiring young people who, almost by accident, I guess, created something that actually made an impact on the world. And I really wanted to be a part of that story. So our show Barons is set in the 70s, a time of, freedom, really big change and really deep creative expression. And it's centered around a group of friends who are these surfers, men and women, whose lives are, I guess, forever changed as they start to build their surfing empires. And within this feud, there's, lost dreams, romance, a love triangle, gender politics, and I guess the eventual succumbing to the outside world. And yeah, I think our show really examines the question of, can paradise really last forever? So when you first meet Tracy, you see that she lives with Trotter in a caravan on a cliff by the sea. And she is completely and totally in love. And, is it too good to be true? Is it? Is it? I don't know. But yeah, she's just in love. There's no other worry in the world, and that all starts to change very quickly. I think the main driving force is to be loved, like any human being. And that starts to shift as they start to build their dream together, and they both start to want more, So it becomes from being loved to being wanted to be respected, to be recognized for her hard work, because she works relentlessly, maybe even harder than Trot, and then she wants to be seen as an equal. So they both start to want more, and for her it's just, yeah, her life changes really quickly. For me, the most fascinating is the humanity and, you know, how people's hearts and souls are really changed by, I guess, success and wanting more. Yeah, so for me, I've personally really loved seeing how, you know, two people who are really young and in love, how that starts to change when they start dreaming and longing for something else. So yeah, the romance stuff. I'm a big romantic as well, like Tracy, so I always go back to that. You know, like, even when audiences watch, like, you're watching things, you know, as like a mirror to yourself. So take everything away, it's what's in here, you know? Well, she's quite unconventional for her time. I mean, she lives in this seaside town, which is she's almost sheltered, and slowly that starts to be penetrated by, you know, the outside world, like capitalism and all these things, these really fierce male forces. But she starts to find her power. I mean, like, all women are powerful, but they don't all realize it. And like, the 70s is the beating heart of the feminist movement. And as we see with our character Trace, yeah, she starts to find her voice and her power, but she's already powerful. She just hasn't tapped into it yet. It's funny, like, I spoke to my mum and I was translating the word brave to her. I'm like, Mum, you're so brave. And she didn't even know what that word actually, she was like, oh, I'm brave. I'm like, yeah, you've gone through so much, you're so resilient. And just like Tracy, like, Tracy she's lost so much in her life. Like, when you meet her, she's lost her mum, has a fragmented family, she's in this other world where she's one of the only people of colour. So not only is she navigating sexism and racism, she's trying to be a businesswoman as well, you know, in this very male, white world. So yeah, she's a bad bitch. Can I say that? He's brilliant. He's such an amazing scene partner, but also a really amazing human being. He's definitely been one of the actors who's really, really challenged me every single time. He always makes me want to be better, and he really loves you, and he always wants both of you to, you know, create something that feels really authentic and fresh every time. And just like Trot, he's ambitious, determined, gutsy. He's such a perfectionist, but also he's so earthy and down to earth and sweet, and just, yeah, he's perfect. So when you first meet these two, you know they have history, because they do. And I guess they share a history that's really, really complicated. There's pain, there's love, there's deep happiness, but it's funny because the present, when you meet them, is actually more complicated. And it's funny because Snapper starts to become the man that Tracy's always wanted him to be, and Trot becomes the man that she never thought he would be. And that becomes very confusing for this protagonist. Love triangle. Yeah. There's many triangles in Barons. This one's the best one. This one is the best one. It's the juiciest one. So when you first meet Tracy, she's with Trotter, and he is the big love of her life. And to her, he is her last love. This is it. I met the one. And then you watch the show a bit more, and you see that Tracy and Snapper, I get mixed up with my ex and my TV husband, they have history, and they used to be in love as well. And as the show progresses, as I was saying, a lot happens, and Trace starts to find herself, I think, in both these relationships. Ben O'Toole is an incredibly generous human being, and he just, like, love pours out of him. He's the kind of person who texts you after a scene and it's like, you know, that was a really great scene, you were so beautiful in that scene, and you're like, oh my God, Ben, am I like the best actor ever? He empowers and inspires all the actors around him. And I blame it on his star sign, because he's a Cancer, and he's very sensitive, very dreamy, and it's hard not to fall in love with Ben. But he also has a sassy dark side as well, which works for Snapper. He's very unassuming, but yeah, he's the best. Well, for me, you know, playing Tracy isn't just playing the one character or the one role, because she chooses to play so many roles in her life. You know, she's not only her own woman, but she's the wife, she's the art teacher, she's a pseudo mum, she's a businesswoman. So she's a very polarizing character, and it's been really interesting trying to explore her inner world and how she wrestles with all these worlds and expectations that are upon her. Yeah, she's just so incredibly modern, you know. She works so hard for what she wants, and she doesn't really ever give up, you know. And I see a lot of my mum in her, and also all the women around me that I grew up, because I'm a kid of the 90s, and all those women, even though it was the 90s, they were also quite undermined still, you know. Like, I don't think society expected much of them, and that's also very similar to the 70s as well. And yeah, it's just been so interesting diving into her world and seeing how she finds her power and her voice slowly. Yeah, so when I first met John, Malloy and Mick Lawrence, the producers on our show, they really enlightened me and educated me about some of the women who were involved with these brands directly, and who were very influential and really creative and smart, but I didn't know about them. I don't think anyone really does, you know? So I did as much research as I could to Rena Merchant, who started Billabong with Gordon Merchant in their tiny flat and burly heads with nothing, and they became like, you know, like billionaires. So I read articles about her. There's not many. And there was also Barb Green that Mick and John told me about, who came up with this Quicksilver name. Yeah, so I delved into that. I watched some surf docs. But for me, the main essence of Tracy that I tried to channel was someone who was around at that time. And that was Jenny Key, who in the 70s, Asian Australian woman, you know, artist, fashion designer, businesswoman, had her own boutique in 74. Like, so I really tried to channel that, that fierce, fabulous entrepreneurial energy into Trace, because they existed, you know, in Rena, in Barb, in Jenny. So it was just like channeling, I guess. Channel. I'm like, come to me. Well, I always say that even though it was the 70s or any other era, I feel like humanity is still the same. It's society that changes. So I think for a woman like her, societal expectations were so different to now, of course, but I don't think anyone expected much of a woman like her back in the day. You know, not only is she a woman, she's Asian, you know? So I think, all the men in her life have different expectations of her. Her dad just wants her to, you know, to have a higher education, to work, get married. Like, I think Trot, it just expects her to just, you know, just to work and just to prod along with him. But I think society at large just didn't expect much of her at all. So yeah, so in so many ways, someone like her had to fight so many battles, you know, whether it was, you know, her sex or her race. Well, there was so much happening, right? It was the end of the Vietnam War, it was the feminist movement, and then you had the White Australia policy that ended in 71. So there was a lot happening, you know, at the time. So personally, music-wise, I always work with music. So I made a Tracy Trotter playlist. Can't tell you the songs because they're personal. No, but I found, you know, like heaps of songs from a bit of like garage rock, some surfy, and also songs from like the 50s and 60s as well, which I felt like that she would have, you know, played in her caravan with Trot. And that really helped get into like that era. But having Shaker ahead of makeup and Marion Boys, costume designer, is, I mean, that's the job done, right? Like you do all this work, but then you come to set and they just transform you inside in, outside in, whatever, and it's been incredible. I remember with Shaker, she said, no makeup. And we all freaked out. We're like, what do you mean? Like, can I have some clear mascara? Can I have some? She's like, no, nothing. And I remember having like a panic attack. I'm like, oh my God, like, no, like, no. But then you watch it and you're like, oh my God, this feels so authentic. And this is the character. Like, Tracy, someone living in the 70s by the sea, she doesn't care about how she looks. She's quite empowered in her skin, in her body, you know. And Marion, when we had our first fitting in my apartment, it was just like being a kid in like a candy shop, you know. And after our session, I said to her, oh, Tracy is a romantic peasant farm girl. And she said, oh, yes, she is, you know. She lives, you know, in like a paddock by the sea. It's just like, and but that was really fun to build like a whole wardrobe with her, taking pieces from, you know, the Edwardian era, things that she would have made herself. Like, so yeah, Marion Boyce is so wonderful. Yeah, but then also we said she has an edge. Like, she's not just like the romantic peasant farm girl doing nothing. She's, you know, she's got that spice, you know? Yeah. I know with working with Fad, so every time I walk away, I know that she's gotten like the best performance. She sees everything, and her vibe on set is she's like a European auteur, you know. She's very anchored and very earthy and very, you know, I don't know. That's my vibe with Fads. She's great. She's really great. And Sean C. Sean C. My love. I worked with Sean once before in my first TV show, and I really think Sean's energy and demeanour and style of working is so seamless for Barons. You know, he's spontaneous, he tries things, he lets you try things. It's just really, really fun with Sean. You know, there's a bit of chaos, there's always something surprising. That's his energy, you know, as he's directing. Yeah, try that, drop that, do that, you know. It just feels really freeing, you know, and I feel like that's also like very 70s as well. Yeah, he's the best. He's the best. I think Barons is thrilling, unpredictable, thought-provoking, and yeah, just like an examination of our humanity as we start to want more. Well, I think when you think of, you know, surf, 70s, you think white man, white male, and exclusively male. But history tells you otherwise, because there were women there, you know, as well. And yeah, our show is this really beautiful ensemble of really exciting young actors who I'm so excited to be, you know, acting alongside. So when you watch the show, it would defy all that. It would defy all that, you know. It's, but yeah, again, and it's really spotlighting a really special part of Aussie history that was so iconic, that really changed the world, and yeah, and also shining a light on the women who were there, who were involved, who were instrumental, and equally as complex and important as the men. But yeah, you'll be surprised. Well, first of all, I hope they're entertained, right? But I hope they see themselves. I hope they see themselves, and I hope they see themselves and they're reminded by how far we've come and how far we haven't come as well. And I hope they're proud to see, you know, these Aussies who were real and who really made a mark on the world, you know, and on this surfing culture, and hope they're inspired. Yeah, I hope they're really inspired. Yeah. Well, Tracy rides a bike, and I just bought a vintage bike the other day. So I've been riding around Sydney, just like she does around Wollongonga. She has a really big heart, you know, like the way that she drew the sun and the sea, and how Trot said, "You're the sunshine." Like, I'm a pretty warm person in real life, like Trace, but she is this luminous force, you know, and she is so generous, and you see her relationships with these men, and you might think, why is she with these men? Like, can't she see that she might deserve more or something? But then she loves unconditionally, and even the most broken people, she doesn't give up on them, you know. She holds on and she fights, and yeah, she's really taught me to, I think, to love more. Yeah. But I think conquering the business world alongside Jules, and I'd like to see that as they start to move beyond this town and internationally and nationally, it'll start to get like a lot more political, and I think she'll start coming up with forces who would just laugh in her face, you know, because in her town, because she's so embedded and intrinsic to the fabric of this town's history, she might experience some casual racism, you know, of course it's sexism, overt or subtle, but I think going into the 80s, it's going to be an even more dangerous world for her.